So by now we've all heard of Doji or Doge or Doggy or whatever you want to call it. It's all over the news. But who are they? What are they doing? And should we be doing the same thing for our finances? Find out today on Mindset with Brad Barrett. Let's go. Welcome back to Mindset. I am Brad Barrett. This is producer Jared. Today we're going to be talking about Doji. I think that's how you pronounce it.
I don't think that's right.
Doji. I to be honest, don't know exactly how Doge.
Look, you're going to correct us on it, I'm sure. Let us know. Look, this is a new thing as of basically January 20th, as of inauguration. It was one of President Trump's executive orders. And we're going to talk about what they are doing. And I want to be very clear about something. If you clicked on this video, you are not going to hear me say one way or other whether it is right or wrong. This is not a political show by any means. I want to share with you simply what they are doing and take one thing that I can see at least that we can all benefit from.
Benefit from what they're doing as a taxpayer or?
From our finances. Do you know much about this, Doji? Have you looked much into it?
Yeah, a little research for this, but no. I mean, it is all over the news. You can't not hear about Doge right now.
Yeah. First and foremost, what is Doji? So the White House Department of Government Efficiency is where they got the name, DOGE. And it was created again by President Trump on January 20th with a mission to slash federal spending. That is the thesis of what Doji is.
Well, I think technically they got the name from the meme coin.
So the other side of this too is there's a meme coin called Doji coin, and that's kind of Elon Musk's, this whole President Trump, Elon Musk thing, right? That's kind of an ode to his support of that cryptocurrency.
Which is crazy or clever. I don't know which is which, but.
Not for us to ascertain at this moment. I'm gonna move right past that one. Look, it is what it is. Being it a department, right, of our government spending, when President Trump launched the Doji through an executive order, which is what he did on January 20th, he housed it within the executive branch, which I find interesting, right? Because you could, rather than creating like an outside, advisory committee or something like that, he kept it in the executive branch. I think, it was an existing, there was already an existing White House agency called the U.S. Digital Service. And it was a unit that primarily works on government technology projects that exist within the Office of Management and Budget. We know that as OMB. That was renamed to U.S. Doji Service, literally on January 20th.
So there technically was an office within the White House
Correct.
that was doing similar things to this.
Correct.
They just kind of renamed it, and he put his pieces and the people to do it.
Exactly. Now, so that's what it is. So for those of you who maybe clicked on this video who kind of heard about it but didn't know, that's what it is. It's a government entity that is literally looking to go through our federal budget and mine through where we need to be spending it, going back from what we've been spending and going forward. So real quick take here. For any one of you right now in any walk of life, I don't care if you're watching us here in your 20s or in your 70s, it's regardless. It's not a bad idea to go take a look at what you got going on and make sure it's where you want to spend your money. Wouldn't you agree?
I would agree. There's, every month or so we go back through our credit card statements and we say, okay, what are we spending? Oh, I have that subscription still going? Oh, I need to cancel that. I don't use that anymore.
You're so smart. You're so effing smart.
I think a lot of us do that, maybe some more than others, but in terms of like your money management, investing life, wealth building process, I can't stress enough how simple that is. But the old saying, right, simple, not easy, but it's important for us doing. And I think that's largely what we're seeing. And I will be the first to say, many of you who watched our show before, many of you who've listened to our podcast for many, many years now know that I'm the first one to say, and I'll say this openly, like I just have always felt our government has overspent. And I think a lot of us as individuals have the same problem. So this is not a government thing versus an us thing or anything else. Mining what's coming in versus what's going out is probably one of the most basic elementary tools we can all take in terms of our finances.
Sure, know what's going on.
Know what's going on. Again, this isn't a right or wrong scenario. It's like, hey, look, let's take a lesson from this, okay? It's not a bad thing to go through your budget and just take a look. Being graceful with the conversation you're having, maybe with your partner in this, if you're married, or even with yourself, right? Internal monologue, if you will, right? Of valuing what it is you're spending on.
And also, like, some of the stuff I see as like death by a thousand cuts.
Yeah.
Because I'll sign up for a lot of stuff. It's like, oh, that's $5 a month. No worries, $5. Oh, this is $6. This is $11.
Yep.
And you're thinking that is not in my overall budget. These are fractions. But then when we do that, like I realize, like, oh my, I'm spending $200
Yeah.
on these subscriptions because they all added up. So it's like these small things can build up.
Truly, you have a dizzying intellect.
Now, the question arises that many of you might be thinking, or maybe you even clicked on this video to ask this question is, did Doge need to be created?
Why? 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 Why?
I think to do that, we need to take a look at the current state of government spending. This is a Department of Government Efficiency, doge.gov. It's a government official United States website. And what I think is really important here is I want to talk about, first and foremost, right now as it stands, as of pulling this up, the estimated savings that they're looking at from Doge is about $105 billion. Now, I want to talk about the spend side of it. We talked about the interests in terms of the percentages of each area it's going to. Now let's talk about the agencies and the dollar amount. So on this website, it shows fiscal year 2019 and then fiscal year 2024 ending of last year. So for example, just taking one, Department of Treasury right here, we had a $689.5 billion expense or spending from an agency perspective for that agency in 2019. And in last year, it was $1.3 trillion. So it almost doubled. If you look at a lot of these, they've gone up. There's not a one on here that I can see right now, at least going through this, that hasn't gone up in the past 5 years. And if you look at the total on that, it went up 51.7% in the last 5 years, from a little over $4.4 trillion to a little over $6.7 trillion in government spending. But here's the revenue sources. This is 2019 and 2024. So right at the top, as I just talked about, individual income taxes, your and I's taxes. In 2019, there was $1.7 billion brought in by the government, let's just call it that, from our taxes. In 2024, that number rose to $2.4 trillion. But here's the kicker, between all those areas of excise taxes, estate and gift taxes, customs and duties, and all that stuff, the total revenue, income in 2019 at $3.4 trillion, a little bit over, and then all of a sudden last year, $4.9 trillion. So our overall revenue increased 42%, when our expenses increased 51%. So last thing I want to talk about, since it's on here, it's a good resource, is the deficit. It's been talked about in the news a lot. To create a deficit, you have to spend more than you're making, which we have been doing. In 2019, our deficit was around $984 billion. As of last year, our deficit ballooned up 85% to $1.8 trillion. We're increasing our deficit. Why? Because we are spending more than we are receiving. Here's the deal. We asked the question, did this need to be implemented? You need to answer that for yourself. I'm not sitting here to tell you if it's right or wrong or we should or should not have. That's for you to answer, and we want to kind of write this show and talk to you about it. Take what you will from this with the data. These are government resources sites. These are updated daily, I believe. You can see everything inside of here. Look, it's a good thing to look at. Whether or not you like who's doing it, that's irrelevant at this point. These are real numbers, and I think it's a good question to be asking, and you can answer it for yourself, whether or not you feel this was an important thing to have instituted. So as you can see, there's a ton of information out there with really great resources for you to, surmise your own to this. And we're gonna talk about that here a little bit because there's a full list on there, by the way, of the Doge spending cuts, all the departments, all the programs. I mean, I have notes here. I got a whole list here. I'm not gonna read them all off you, but from my looking at it, Jared, I don't know if you agree, there's no picking and choosing going on. I mean, every department I can think of is on this list. Department of Labor, Department of Transportation, Federal Trade Commission, I'm just name a few. You got Homeland Security. I mean,
it appears they're not discriminating. They're literally going department to department looking for cuts.
Let's talk about this for a second, because through this show and in talking it, this kind of just came to mind as we're going through this. I want to help you all answer this question. And I'm going to answer it for you from my perspective. I'm going to tell you how I feel about this. If you don't have the money, you don't spend the money.
I agree with that wholeheartedly.
So this notion of well, this is wrong, we shouldn't be cutting areas here, I understand that, but we don't have the money. If we have a deficit, I don't care if you're a United States government or you're John and Jane Smith down the street. If you are running a deficit, you have to look at your budget. So yes, did this need to be instituted? I think this is a great thing. I think we all should employ this strategy.
Yeah, let's be honest. The government has a lot of great programs. They're doing good. They're helping a lot of people. And that's why it gets a little tricky. Because some of these programs are going to have to get cut. And hopefully they're just temporary. But when we're spending like this, you have to prioritize certain programs and certain things.
Yeah.
But we have to stop spending money we don't have to save us from a worse fate that might be coming in the future.
You just summarized in 30 seconds government and politics. This is the problem. You're never going to agree on something like the subjectivity. And again, I want to use this word appropriately here. The value that one person will place on something might be a different value proposition that another person will place on. I've said this before in just general wealth discussions. You know the difference between rich and poor is? It's a word. It's value.
Yeah.
Some people place their value in terms of time. Some people place their value in terms of relationships or their health, which might make them fiscally not as rich or wealthy as the other person. Some person might place their value proposition in amassing wealth. Like, we have to understand, we have to bring some grace to these conversations. That's a great example. You might not like that your budget might be cut in an agency you're working at. And you're like, how can they do this? We're doing such good things. And you're not wrong.
Yeah.
Here's the problem. There's not a right or wrong per se, but look, end of the day, we're spending too much. It's just a fact.
And make no mistake, nobody wants to see people lose jobs. I
No.
mean, this is terrible to see. This is affecting real families in a negative way. But if we don't address this now, thousands of jobs could turn into millions of jobs in the future, or something worse, like our economy completely collapses. So for me, this is really needed.
I tend to agree. And look, I'll be candid with y'all. If we were in a surplus right now, I'd have a little bit of a different tune.
Oh, 100%.
I mean, think about it. If it was, let's play utopia for a second. If we were actually spending less than we were making, we had a surplus, this probably wouldn't be as necessary. Wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely.
In fact, you might argue the opposite, or say, well, hey, let's do some investments, maybe keep some for the bad times, that we all should do in our personal finances. But let's also deploy some more to some good agencies, right? You'd almost have the opposite conversation. And guess what? Hint, hint, you'd probably have some politicizing in that camp too. Why are you giving them more here and there? It's never going to end. Don't waste your stress or your anger on this, okay? I think it's really important to look at the whole and just say, look, we are overspending. That number, you cannot argue. Getting into the weeds of what we're sending abroad versus domestically, and what in domestically we're cutting or not cutting. Again, there's a whole list on there you can look at. It's pretty much across the board. Yes, there's some that are percentage-wise getting cut more than others. Look, that's going to come down to who we voted, which is why your vote matters, right? Who you voted in and who's making these decisions for you. That's the democracy that we live in.
And we want to be clear that we're not saying any of these cuts are good or bad or whatever. We're just saying we believe we're overspending and we need to stop.
We agree on that, right? And I think anyone logically, and I hope I'm not triggering anybody by saying this, but anyone logically would say, if you don't have the money, you don't have the money to deploy. It's, it really shouldn't be more of a question on that.
And it shouldn't be politicized. It's just basic math. I mean, just look at the numbers. It's just numbers.
Generally speaking, on a month-over-month basis, and then you obviously annualize that to a year-over-year basis, if you are spending more than you're making in your own personal life, you have to take a look at it. You do have to take the DOGE approach. Whether you like it or not, you probably should. It's important to take a look at subscriptions, things that you have purchased that you may not need anymore. Are those things still valuable? Can you sell them? Does that make sense to sell them? By the way, this is where a financial advisor comes in. This is a lot of what I do for my clients, is to help them with these daily, monthly, quarterly, annual decisions that come up. Even down to a conversation with a client. I just had it the other day, which is why I'm bringing this up. We're wanting to help their child out, and they're having this whole thing like, I gotta help them. They're in a tough spot. And I have to have this hard conversation. I'm like, I hear you, but that's a very large distribution out of your retirement that, could have the potential for disrupting what you see the next 20 years of your life being. It's a hard conversation. And I understand that's a very tough position. To be honest with you, being a parent, I'd probably do the same thing. That's us as a parents. We jump on that grenade for them. It's just a part of our being. And, as a weird analogy as it might be, our government has to look at us like, children sometimes, that we're voting and they're designed there to care for us. Now, don't take that out of context in the sense of like, well, that in general is how our founding fathers set this up, was to care for the United States people. Whether you think that's not happening or not is not for me to say, but that's how they should be looking at it. And I do feel like in an indirect way, they're doing this by caring for us in a logical way, saying, hey, you know what? We have been overspending. We should probably take a look at it. Let's set up a department, an executive order to do it. Don't get too mad at that. It's not a bad thing. Okay? If you're overspending, it's not a bad thing.
And as I look to increase my retirement and look into the future, we got to start looking at our spending going like, is $100 a month in TV subscriptions worth what we could make, or put that into an account somewhere, or the money we could make off of it over years?
100% agree. Look, you're completely right in that. I mean, You can run any different mathematical equation saying the $100 you're spending on something versus $100 you're investing in something. There will be likely dollars later if you invest it wisely. But again, if you're valuing that $100 into the time you're spending watching that channel or whatever it is, that's your prerogative. We all get that decision. See, we have to remember this. We all have the beauty of something here in this country of our own decisions, whether good or bad, all right? So we have to remember that. You can choose as a free person in this country where you choose to spend your money. You also can choose to overspend and get yourself in a bind and not be able to get yourself out of it.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about our debt show. Debt is on the rise, and there is
Massively.
there is good debt, and the country does have good debt. But I think the key is that spending. If you can get out of control real quick, and it just leads to destruction.
To sum up, end of the day, was this needed? I think if you're in a deficit, if you're a country in a deficit, you absolutely need to look at your spending. It's just that simple. If we were in a surplus, different conversation.
Country or person.
Country or person. And that's the whole point of today's show, is not to only talk about something that's been going on that has to do with money, which I think is right up our alley to talk about, but also for you individually. How you look at your money, no different than how Doge is looking at our money in terms of our country spending. It is wise counsel. I can't ignore that. I'm going to end on that. I hope you guys enjoyed it. You can take a look at the resources that we brought up. These are actual government websites that are out there for you to look at, do your own research. We always enjoy you sending this to a friend, subscribing. Please make sure to comment. Let us know your thoughts. We love having a forum here to talk about it, and we're going to be with you next week. But until then, always make sure to lead with love, and everything's going to be okay. See you guys.